Greetings everyone, this is Yahav Ever coming to you live from the Middle East, and today I'm going to be talking about a controversial topic, and that's the truth about Zionism. In all of the topics that I do, I find it very important to start dealing with terminology. The most important word in this list that you see here is the second to last one, and that's the issue of Zionut. And that's what I'm going to be discussing today. What exactly is Zionut, or as people call it modernly, Zionism? In ancient times, when there was a kingdom of Israel, you had several different ethnic groups that existed within it that are listed right now. These different ethnic groups were basically a part of a nation that had a legal system, it had a central core idea and languages, which I've discussed in other videos that I've done. There's only one real way to understand what exactly Zionut is, or Zionism as it's modernly called, and that's with understanding the word. The word itself is based upon a location. It's based upon a group of areas that are known in a region as we have now known it as Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. From there, one can go and start to figure out what exactly then is the concept that's being described by this word. The concept basically dates back about 4,000 years ago to a time of a man named Avraham ben Terach. It was this Avraham ben Terach who made a number of land deals with a group of people known as the Canaanim, who basically from there, his descendants, that is Avraham ben Terach, formed a nation known as Israel. During the period of a number of generations, Israel were basically attacked by a group of foreign invading armies that forced a number of either physical confrontations, wars, or basically the defense of the land itself. In every one of these situations, basically the people of Israel were defending the legal right that they had to the land that was purchased by their ancestor Avraham ben Terach. The basic focus of this ancient Zionut that we're talking about deals with the actual region known as Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and has always been a matter of either the people of Israel being forced into defensive wars or even offensive wars in order to protect the land that had been inherited to them by their ancestor Avraham ben Terach. This land, of course, is dealing with a specific region that was anciently known as Israel, and then later the name was changed by the Romans to Palestine. So the obvious question right now is, what are actually some sources that actually deal with Zionut? And not just modern sources of people giving their modern opinions, but what are ancient sources of Zionut? So as you can see now, the next couple of slides will be presenting to you what comes from a number of different Jewish texts, a number of different archaeological digs that basically establish the idea that Zionut, this idea of returning to the land of Israel, that some people today call Palestine, was always a concept that existed amongst Jews all over the world. There's always been a concept of our writings, our different literature, as well as those concepts of religious belief. But once again, the center focus is that this was a basic concept that has always existed amongst the people of Israel, and is something that you can't separate from the people of Israel or the Jewish people. And even though there are people who try to force themselves away from it, the concept has always been there. This concept is something that has been a driving force for a number of years, a number of centuries, a number of different decades of Jews who were either trying to return to the land of Israel, even when it was not to their economic advantage to do so, but also to try to reestablish the concept within their children to always remember where their ancestry came from. We even have this concept of Zionut, this concept of Zionism in common with Muslims, that even in the Quran we see that there's always been a mention that Allah basically gave the land of Israel to the Jewish nation, to the Israelim, to be able to form a particular type of nation founded upon principles that were logical and made sense. This concept is something that cannot be taken out of the Quran and thrown out as basically hearsay or information that is not applicable, but it is something that is very important and could be a source of peace between Israelis and Arab nations. This concept also deals with a number of different things in terms of the type of society, which I think is at the crux of the conflict that we have right now. That if both sides were to return to their respective historical texts concerning the land of Israel, that both sides would eventually be able to have peace. But in order to get to that point, we have to rely on what the ancient concepts say and not what modern political concepts speak about. So this is the thing that I've always found interesting, and I've also had the most in common with Muslims when we can discuss this issue of what do our texts say about the land of Israel and about Zionut, that we find that once we start looking at the ancient text, we have less problems with each other. Because as we go back, we can even look further into other societies and see that they knew that there was always a concept of Yisraelim, or Yehudim, of Israelis and Jews who always wanted to return to the land of Israel for a specific purpose. So one of the biggest problems that we face in modern times in terms of establishing Zionut for what it really is that on some level it has been hijacked into a concept that never existed. As you can see from this slide, these are the original concepts of Zionut that can be found in Jewish text as well as Islamic text going back thousands of years. And this is very important because of the fact that many people see within Zionism things that are not really a part of Zionut. And if they were simply to study and help us establish the state that we're supposed to have, all things would eventually make sense. This list here is a list of foreign invading occupying armies for the last 2,000 years over this region known as Israel. All of these armies are made up of different groups of nations or peoples who are foreign to the region. This list, is basically comprehensive enough to show us that during this period, after the defeat of the last Israeli, the last Jewish, as well as Samaritan, Shomroni, freedom fighters for the land, that a number of foreign occupiers basically came in. And during this time, the only people who were looking for the freedom of the land and praying or, basically doing whatever they could to see a one day, realized freedom were those of the Jews, those who descended from Jews as well as Samaritans. We know from historical sources, both Judaic and Islamic, that there was always a significant Jewish presence here in the Middle East, as well as a significant Samaritan presence in this part of the Middle East. And this is something that can be affirmed by a number of sources outside of Jewish sources. The history here of Jews and Samaritans who've always lived here is a very rich history, and also a desire to one day see the ancient kingdom of Israel return. And then you can find this in different writings as well as different actions that were taken, such as this deed that you're looking at now that gives ownership of many parts of Hebron to the Jews that was under the Ottoman Empire. So when we look at modern Zionism, there's a number of misconceptions that people have about what things were happening prior to this establishment of the modern state of Israel. Many of these misconceptions, I think, are in part because of the fact that many foreign powers have been so involved in this process, which has caused a number of people who are residents of these foreign powers to basically jump over a number of important issues when you deal with this issue. One of the things that always has to be remembered is that there was no state that was given by the UN. Many of the things that people use as excuses for claiming that the British or the UN gave us a country are basically things that are not true and not according to any kind of historical proof. The basic concept is that there was a number of different countries who did not want to see a Jewish state here in the Middle East. That included the UN, that included also the British, and that included many Arab nations that were here. It was during this time that even the Jews who were fighting for the freedom of the land rejected many of the plans that the UN had because of the fact that they were fighting for the full, complete restoration of the land of Israel. One of these groups being Lehi, one of the freedom fighter groups of the region. Basically, this group, and as well as a number of all the Jewish armies that were fighting for the freedom of the land, were made up of a number of different Middle Eastern as well as European and African Jews who had made their way to the land or who had always been in the land. And interestingly enough, many of these armies were also made up of Arabs who fought in the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as Bedouins who were fighting for the freedom of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, showing that as basically that Jews and Arabs can work together for a common cause. And basically that common cause was to kick at the British, who were a foreign occupying force, being the last one until the modern establishment of the State of Israel. Once again, we get back to this issue of the modern form of Zionism. Even though it not being 100% based upon ancient Zionut, the basic idea of freeing the land has been a constant concept within Zionut and within Zionism for several thousand years, and is something that more than likely will continue to be. And one of the reasons that this basically came to fruition during that time was once the State of Israel was established, or at least announced to be established, that's when it was invaded and attacked by a number of foreign armies, basically trying to continue this process of foreign occupation. And basically these armies were also being supported by the British, as well as a number of UN countries who, once again, this disproves the idea that the State of Israel came from the UN or from the British, because of the fact that both sides were actually helping the Arab nations who were invading to try to destroy this nascent State of Israel. As of yet, the modern State of Israel has not lived up to the goals of ancient Zionut, but it is something that those of us who live here in the land of Israel can accomplish, given the right amount of time and given complete freedom from foreign rule, that we can actually build the society that our ancestors dreamed of, and that can be a light to many nations. So this is a basic short synopsis of what is true Zionut, aka true Zionism.